welcome to the December edition of Motormouth on the PC.
It is 56 degrees outside, and they call it December.
Yeah, but last week it was snowing.
It's supposed to be snowing now. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's all right. Here on the PC TV network, and Motormouth is brought to you by the Boyertown Museum of Historic Vehicles, and we're here in the beautiful 1938 Reading Diner. And the museum is located at 85 South Walnut Street in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. And we'd love to hear from you at home. If you want to contact us here at the museum, you can reach us on the phone 610-367-2090, or you can visit our website, boyertownmuseum.org, and hopefully get your question answered on there. If you can't, send us an email, mail, at boyertownmuseum.org. And of course, this being December, usually we're open 7 days a week, 9:30 to 4, but we've got some major holidays coming up here. So just so everyone knows, we are closed Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and then New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But that whole week in between, we will be open our regular hours, and I think that's a really great time to come visit the museum, and especially because, you know, people are maybe looking for something to do with their out-of-town guests. Well, come here to the museum. We're open, and check out all the great things that we have here to offer and see. And if you haven't been here in a while, you'll see a lot of changes. So it's time to come back. Yes. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And coming up in 2018, you know, January we're open, but we don't really have any events going. But in February, you might want to mark your calendars because on Tuesday, February 13th, we'll be having Fastnacht Day right here in the diner again. So we took a break from this last year because of the floor project. But now we're going to do it again this year. So it's really neat. Again, you get to sit here and eat in the diner, which is always a plus. Yes, that'll be February.
Are they
February
homemade
13th.
Fastnachts?
Yes, they're delicious.
Well,
someone tells me I actually don't eat Fastnachts, but
oh.
Those that are in the know, they tell me that they're good. But we'll be here, and we hope that you'll join us for that. It's a really neat time.
I'll be working. I won't be here.
You want me to save you one?
Maybe I'll take the day off.
You should. And then you can come here and they can stump you with some question.
Yes. Okay.
So that's exciting. And you know what? While we're at it, I'll mention too that in March, on the 10th and the 11th, that's a Saturday and a Sunday, we're going to be doing a Hoods Up weekend. So we get a lot of questions. You know, people through here want to see the engines. And normally we have the hoods closed and you can't really see them. But on that weekend, we will have most of the engines opened, or the hoods open, so you can see these really neat engines. This is great if you're really into the mechanics of the car. And we'll have extra tour guides around to answer questions. And sometimes puzzle over things with you. We look at some of this stuff times and aren't really quite sure what it's supposed to be doing. So.
I was here this past Saturday, and I was researching with another member about not a motorized vehicle. Well, I guess it's motorized, but the electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Remember you emailed me, I think. But and it was kind of interesting on how they recharged the electric cars way back like 100 years ago. We have some of that equipment here. That's kind of interesting.
And now we've hopefully learned a little more about it now too recently to fill in our visitors while you're here. So keep those dates in mind for 2018, February 13th and then March 10th and 11th. And with that, I guess we're going to go to the show, and we have no guest this evening.
You're the guest.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I'm the other guest.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
It's not all on me. So between the two of us, we'll find ways to fill the hour. Don't worry. So I think actually we're going to move out of here
Right, we
for
are.
our first segment, and we'll find you out there in just a moment. Well, we're standing here by the Model T truck, which has been very modified. We had this on a show before, actually.
I think we did.
And we talked mostly about the trains. There's a model train set up in the back, multi-level, but we're not talking about the trains tonight.
No,
my
we aren't.
understanding. What are we talking about with this truck now?
Okay. Well, before we talk about it, this is Christmas time. We're just a few days from Christmas as we're recording this, and one of the Christmas gifts that people give each other goes with the name of Tiffany.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So no, you're not getting anything
Oh,
Tiffany from
that's
me.
all right.
Okay. And I found out there's a few Tiffany's out there, businesses. I always thought there was one Tiffany.
Yeah.
That's it. But there's like three of them talking about. One of them is Tiffany Company, which is the American luxury jewelry and specialty retailer. So I know they have a big store, big fancy store in New York, and they probably have stores other places, and high-end jewelry, high-end.
Very.
Okay. And you ought to ask your husband for something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that was a no. Okay, but anyway, that Tiffany started like almost 200 years ago, 180 years ago, and you know, still exists out in New York. Well, then that's that one. And then there's another Tiffany, and this is Tiffany Glass. I always thought they were the same company.
I did too.
So I was like somewhat stunned.
They're not?
Well, maybe surprised that they weren't.
I'm
But
stunned.
Tiffany Glass talks about different glass type objects. I'm sure you've seen like lamps and such
Yes.
that have the Tiffany thing. You know,
See, that's more my style than
yeah.
this one.
I mean, there's company that makes like reproduction style of
Right.
them. And you hear of a lot of older churches that had Tiffany stained glass windows. And there were some interesting things about this, and I know this is not car related, but it's so interesting. I know
Yeah.
our viewers will be interested in it too. In 1865, Tiffany, let's see, what's his name? I don't know what that Tiffany.
Mr.
Oh,
Tiffany.
Louis Comfort Tiffany. This is the Tiffany
Comfort.
glass Tiffany, okay? 1865, traveled to Europe and London and visited the Victoria and Albert Museum. He saw all the medieval glass they had, different colors, was convinced that the quality of his glass that was in this country could be improved upon. And it was interesting how he improved it. And this is his own words: the rich tones are due in part to the use of pot metal full of impurities, and in part to the uneven thickness of the glass. So I always thought that was interesting. So what we would think is perfect glass, nice and smooth, no impurities in the metal that holds them together.
Right.
And he says, no, you do that and it's going to have that look. And I went online and I was looking at some Tiffany stuff, the real stuff,
Yeah.
with like big dollar signs behind it.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. So anyway, up to 1932, they were manufacturing the Tiffany glass in New York City. So they're out of the picture too. Okay, that leaves us to Tiffany number 3.
There's a third.
There's a third, okay? Excuse me. Now, before we get into it, I'll talk about some old narrow streets. This is in Europe, parking lights, okay? You know where we're going now, all right? Parking lights are intended to be left on after dark to show a nighttime driver just how much room he has. So European, that's where we're talking here. Up until about 35 years ago in Britain, there was a law that you had to leave your parking lights on all the time when parked at night, okay? Some towns up even to 35 years ago did not have street lights, so you didn't want your car or another car getting banged with other cars, with other cars, unless you had lights. Now you probably figured out, viewers, that you see this little light right here, and this is what we're talking about. Except this is not a Tiffany. I don't know what brand this is. I looked underneath, I looked all over, no wordage at all. But that's what that is for. 1920, in this country, in Wisconsin, there was a new law said you needed such lights when parking, but not if you park on a street where visibility was 500 feet. That's 1920.
Does that get affected by the rain or the weather? I mean, if it's a rainy night, do you have to go out and...
You have to measure to see if you
Yeah.
can see 500 feet.
I mean,
don't
I
know.
guess I wonder You know, now they say if it's gray a day, you need to put your windshield wipers on.
Yeah.
The same applies.
I don't know. I guess if you didn't want to crash or have somebody run into you. 1920, Chicago, this is Illinois, Chicago citizen was fined $7.60 by a judge for parking without leaving his lights on. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So, and I remember when we got this truck from the gentleman who donated, he told me, he goes, this was on Broad Street in Philadelphia, you had to have this. And I'm thinking, I never heard of that before. And I've looked at pictures sort of from this era, from the 20s in Philadelphia, like on Broad Street, and I'm thinking they were Broad Street, and I didn't see anything like that. And so it was interesting. I came across this Tiffany parking light. I said, how about that? That's what he was talking about. And the more I looked into it, so there was parking lot laws, and if you give me a moment, you can ask me a question or two while I'm looking for this.
Well, maybe you're going to cover this. I don't want to preempt you, but also, I know it might be hard to tell on camera, but the 3 lenses are 3 different colors.
Correct.
Too.
Correct.
Is there...
I believe there's red on the front and green on this side.
It's clear in the front.
And clear. Oh, I meant red in the back.
Is yeah.
Yeah,
red
the front and
facing
back.
you.
I got things
And
backwards there.
Agreed. Is there a rhyme or reason to that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you in a moment as soon as I find it.
All right.
But they talk about laws. I have this is Pennsylvania law session from 1921, and they're talking about parking lights, and they have laws for parking lights in 1921. And here we are. That a motor vehicle while standing upon any public highway may exhibit only a parking light in accordance with the previous further set forth in this section. Okay, that doesn't really tell you much except it's a law. Every motor
Sounds like a
vehicle,
law.
another paragraph here, every motor vehicle while standing upon any public highway at such times as lights are required by the provisions of this section for motor vehicles may, in lieu of the lighting equipment specified in this act. I think that means if you're standing or parking, okay. Show one light of at least 2 candle power, carried on the left side of the car in such a manner as to be visible from the front and the rear, and as to show white to the front, red to the rear. Shall be considered a full compliance with the terms of this clause. So this one here with the green on the side, that was a bonus.
It's an overachiever.
Overachiever.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it, and it's kind of interesting here. And I came out somewhere in this mess of paperwork. I have something from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and they're also talking about laws, and that's in 1920, and I just found it here. It says special parking lights showing white in the front, red in the rear may be used on the left rear fender, okay, and that's Grand Rapids, Michigan. So, and that's from the Chamber of Commerce, which I thought was interesting. So that's that. So that is some of what was going on. This is 1921, 22. That's when I found this Tiffany things. And a little history here, not history, but we'll say post-history of these. And what year is this truck again? 24?
Yeah, 24, 26.
I forget what it is. It's a 24, because I
Okay.
just saw the sign over there. Okay, so this is 1924, and so they were probably still doing it there. So they had a different switch as the headlights, and there's probably a switch in here somewhere to activate it, because I know it is wired up. I did check that out, but I didn't look for the switch. But anyway, parking lights were on the same system as headlights, like starting in 1968. So when you turn that on, parking lights. But who uses parking lights anymore? Right? You probably didn't even think about it, but I remember at dusk you turn your parking lights. When it got dark, you turn your headlights on. Now my lights in my car go on automatically. And more,
most of them do, I think.
What was parking lights is your turn signal now.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, that's it. So, and there was also parking lights that came equipped with the cars back then too. Not all of them had it. There was an extra thing, extra cost. You have them up here in a cowl.
Yep.
Okay, this doesn't have a cowl because the hood goes right up to here. Or you have something like this kerosene lamp here, and you had cars hanging, or lights hanging from there doing the same thing. And see, this doesn't have a light in the back. Some do, some don't.
I think our Daniels has parking lights on the cow, don't they?
Yes, they do. Both.
It's strange to me because if you were coming from behind, you wouldn't see it. This,
Right. Yeah.
you at least have
So I
a
guess
chance.
with the Daniels, as you mentioned, they're up here in the cow, and they're
Pointing
sort
right
of
in
pointing
front.
front. And I guess you would still need one of these.
Yeah.
Or you'd get arrested in Chicago.
I don't want to do that.
I don't know if you noticed this, viewers, we just had a slight problem here. We had a bug fly into our light,
did.
and it kind of
And
killed the light for a bit.
The poor bug just killed himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wanted to watch, he wanted to be part of the show.
He got a little too close.
Yeah. So
We apologize.
I think right before we were interrupted, we were being arrested in Chicago.
We were. Hopefully someone bailed us out.
That bug.
Yeah.
He sacrificed his life for us.
What a good kid.
Yeah, what a good kid. Anyway, we got freed from Chicago, and we're back to the Tiffany lamps here. So this Tiffany, the third one, 1921-22, out of Newark, New Jersey. They were manufacturer of automotive electrical equipment. Also the sole distributor for Gummon, Gummon.
Okay.
Okay, which is like a Bakelite type insulating material that was used for, like that plastic stuff you see.
Yes.
Yes?
That's cool.
Like
I like
boot wear?
Bakelite.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
My dad used to work at Bakelite. Uh-huh, yep, okay.
Stay tuned for another show.
So anyway, Tiffany parking lamp, okay, some quotes for you here. Every driver realizes the danger to his own and passing cars when he parks his car without a light burning. And yet he continues to do so at risking a serious accident or a police summons rather than wear down the battery, which has so many services to perform. Perhaps it is because the police are getting more strict, but the fact remains that the very useful parking lamp is certainly becoming most popular, especially in the East. And I thought that was interesting.
Especially in the East.
1921. So, and they made a big deal about it being a part of the car. Now, I was hoping I'd have some pictures, but the pictures are so bad that I'm going to spare them. But just kind of imagine it's similar to this. Okay, there you go. And it didn't have the little side one; it just had the front
this
and
is
back
super
light.
fancy.
Okay?
This one.
So it was 2-candle power mounted on the fender, operated by concealed switch. The Tiffany one, it would cost you $1.50 for standard finish in black.
That bug is still the last bits of life. He's still flailing around.
Or if it was finished in nickel, it would be $1.75. So it was, I don't know what that is in today's prices, but it costs you a little chunk of money. Now there's also a Tiffany step lamp. Okay, and we're going to take a slight step back here, and this is not a very good vehicle to show it with, but the cars at that time, you'd have your running board down here, and you'd have a metal splash piece right here, and it'd be mounted right on the side, and it would illuminate both the front here and the back here, and then shine out towards the curb so you could see. And that was a Tiffany thing too. I'm sure there was other companies made it. I think like our Packard might have one, and some others there. It says most accidents are caused by lack of illumination on the steps of automobiles and at places where people alight more than any other way except by collision. And so that was kind of interesting. So, now obviously we have enough lights, and the lights that we have on a car reflect, so you can see it. You're going down the road, you see the reflection of other lights. If you're coming out of a car, you got the interior lights shining out. You might have one on your door and so on and so forth. So we don't really need them, but it's an interesting past, a little bit of history from the past about a little object like this.
Yeah. So come check it out, and we'll have to look for some step lights on some of our other cars.
As well.
Very cool.
Okay. I think we're going somewhere now.
And I think we're going further back in time, actually.
We are, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We'll see you then. Okay, before we get to this car, you just went on a little reconnaissance mission, didn't you?
Reconnaissance, yes. I just checked out our 3 Daniels cars for lights, step lights, which are above the running board. And one of them has it just on the passenger side of the car, up below the rear door. And the other two just have holes in the metal, like should be there, but they aren't there.
Yeah, they're like about that big.
Yeah, a little bigger than that.
I've wondered what those holes were supposed to be, but
Yeah.
that makes
And there
perfect
even
sense.
there might be more cars in here, but that's, I only had a couple minutes.
Well, the Daniels are fancy cars. I mean,
They
they're
are,
higher
yes.
end, so I would think if a car,
I figured the Packard had one. I even mentioned that, but
Yeah.
that did not have
yeah,
one.
like your Model T probably isn't going to have one.
No.
But a Daniels, yeah, I
Yeah.
can see that.
Model T is probably an aftermarket thing.
Future show.
Well, that would have a Tiffany. They'd have a little Tiffany
Exactly.
stepway in there. So,
But now we've moved on. Like I said, well, we've gone back in time.
way back.
Yeah, way back. This is the Hill car, and it's named the Hill car after its inventor, creator, builder, James Hill, and he built this in Fleetwood, pretty close by. We're not really sure exactly when. The debate on that
Right.
continues. A lot of it because paperwork and documentation wasn't so great. He didn't build this for really anything but his own personal use, so he wasn't really into like getting patents or marketing it or something that we can look back to that kind of stuff. And it's the only one he built.
Right.
And the earliest date we've seen is 1868, which I think a lot of us doubt. It seems to be more of a starting date, or
Right.
maybe he thought about starting this at 1868. But anyway, why are we standing with the Hill car?
Okay. Well, I came across something the other day. If anybody out there is familiar with Hemmings, Motor News, they have a daily email that goes out. And I get it, and I kind of glance, and there's always stuff that interests me. And there was something yesterday, something called the Turin chapter. Did I say that?
I think it's Turin.
Turin, okay, as the city in Italy, okay, the anglicized Torino. There we go. Okay, but they have the Turin Charter, and this is by a group, and I'm really going to chop this up.
Oh, don't look
How
to
good is
me.
your Italian?
Terrible. It's a German.
Federation Internationally des something,
Yeah.
but it means Federation of International Old Vehicles, I think. Okay?
FIVA.
Yeah,
Let's call it FIVA.
Okay, and they have this charter that they created, and at first I thought it was something to do with Europe, and there's a lot of European connections in it, but it's an international thing, whereas this group of people sat down and they said, okay, for the preservation of old vehicles, motorized vehicles, this is how we're going to present it. This is what we're going to look at. And it really goes into some details. It's over 100 pages. And no, I didn't read the whole thing.
I didn't either, sorry.
But just reading the introduction, which is about 4 pages, and what was written up in Hemmings itself as an introduction to the introduction was kind of interesting. And I mentioned this to Kendra. I said, this is kind of interesting because we are a museum and we do try to preserve things. We don't really restore things here. We might get things, we repair it.
Yes.
But they're all into repairing things without over restoring, or you're going to repair things to still make it period correct, right?
Yes.
So as a curator, we're standing in the oldest motorized vehicle in our collection, and we really don't have to do anything to it because we don't want to do anything, correct?
No.
But we still have to preserve this. And how does one preserve something, that's 150 years old?
Man, you're putting me on the spot, aren't you?
I am. I am.
To be honest with you, it's something that I would say we struggle with a lot because you're right. There is a point where you can overdo it and lose some of what makes it such a unique piece to begin with. Here you'll see on this is by no means a mint condition piece, but you know what? It probably never was. And I was reading that Hemmings, and I was skimming through the big, huge charter there, And they kind of touch on this, that these mint condition restorations, they restore them to a state they never would have been in.
Right.
You know, even this was, you know, a backyard thing. Some guy built this really in his yard, in his barn, whatever, out of parts he found, and he probably, you know, it was for personal use. But even, you know, a Chevy off the assembly line isn't going to be mint condition.
Right.
And they, you know, basically they're restoring these things way beyond their standards to begin with.
And you hear the term thrown out a lot, over-restored.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know there's some groups out there and they restore them so perfectly. And I don't have anything against that either, because if they want to do that, you know, do the research and such, and that's interesting field too. But
it is, and that takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of craftsmanship too. Some of these guys are really pretty amazing with what they can do, woodworking, metalworking. I mean, that's a skill. That's a really finely honed skill too.
But you know, we try to preserve things here, and you know, we had we put a lot of work into stabilizing the environment in here as far as the temperature and humidity level and such.
Something
and,
we've really tackled the past couple years.
Yeah.
Trying to
and we have,
curb that.
you know, we have a building that's a relatively old building, and it's difficult, but we do this. And this vehicle here, now before that camera started and before the light was on, we had a barrier, is that what you call it? Ropes, come all the way around this car. Now you can see in our other cars and behind us, you can walk around them pretty easy. But this one, you know, it's like, okay, just this is special here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, some of it too is we have a lot of trucks, you know, and a lot of trucks, by their very nature, what they're built to do is work. You know, so they did get beat up and they did get scraped up, and to us, that's part of their history. It tells part of their story. You know, here specifically, the Body Works, of course, did delivery trucks. Well, delivery truck is not going to be mint condition. Right. It ain't going to be mint condition for very long. So, you know, some of that fixing, banging out some of those dents, or fixing the paint, that's kind of erasing some of the story that they tell. Right,
right. Yeah, and what was I going to say also? The word patina is thrown about. I think this is beyond patina here, but some of the vehicles we have in the museum have this coating of patina, even the ones that maybe were restored, you know, 30, 40 years ago. But aside from that, I'm thinking of the nicely preserved vehicles from way back in the 20s and 30s that we have.
Yeah.
I think of the little Bantam we have on loan out there, the little orange panel truck.
Yeah,
is
that's
swell.
beautiful.
Yeah, you guys have to come and look at that.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a good example of, and again, it is a panel truck. It was used by a local business. It's got some rust and some dings, but it should.
Yeah.
You know, it should. And I mean, that's not our vehicle, but if it was, we would never touch it, because it's pretty much perfect the way it is.
So I'm glad, like in the last 10 years, people have been preserving more. It seems like in my mind, they've been preserving more cars than just restoring everything. I can see them restoring something if it is like falling apart, you know, in pieces. But if it's a complete vehicle, leave it alone.
Well, and sometimes, you know, here, once in a while, you know, we do have a little accident with something, like we accidentally scrape something, and we would try to fix that kind of stuff, because that was something, it doesn't say anything about how it was used. It was a mistake. You know, we try to fix that. But other than that, we generally try to leave it alone. Some of the cars do run, and, you know, sometimes that can also affect them. This will never try to run.
No. In fact, you know, it's interesting about this not running and preserving as built. this is not as it was built originally
No,
because
it's not.
it's the third engine, I believe.
Yes.
But the first two are steam engines. This is a gasoline-powered engine, and it's. But you look at it, you can see it's all exposed in the back there, and it is very different than what you see today. So we preserved it, I guess, as James Hill last used
Finished it.
And so still it tells a really unique history and
Yeah.
stuff.
And I mean, this car specifically, I don't know what happened to those the original engines.
Right. Yeah.
Who knows?
They probably they had to probably use them as a pump somewhere, and they just pulled, hey,
Well,
hey Jimmy, we got to use your motor, you know. So
that's actually probably not far flung either, you know. So who knows? But we don't have it. We can't preserve it. What it really originally, we do the best we can. This is still an old engine. I think we've determined this is probably from the 20s.
okay.
What it has in it now. The rest of the body is about 40 years older, but that's what we got. That's what we can do.
You say it's from the 20s, but still the engine in it is a lot different than you know, these vehicles behind me, car engine. It's just it's an odd engine, and a lot of it's exposed, you know, and it's interesting. And you know, and as we're talking, I keep glancing at my notes here, which is stuff from this charter, and it talks about the historic substance of a vehicle needs to be preserved. Okay, and so we look at this as a historical item. And you know, you're the curator here, so you have to make sure it stays as it is. And here's another thing: cultural. It's part of a cultural heritage of our civilization. That sounds pretty broad and sounds really important, but it is. You know,
I read that, and I like that quote because it's true. I mean, it is. These are machines that we built, and almost everybody uses them daily. I mean, how many other things can you say that about that almost everyone here uses daily?
And so we've used this as an example again because it's our oldest piece, and it might be our most historic
it's pretty
piece
much preserved.
too, And you know, we have a couple other things we kind of rank up near here, like the original Boyertown body vehicles and stuff. And you know, but if you come here as a visitor, when you come here as a visitor, you know, you look at these things and think of the history behind it, the stories. You know, Kendra mentioned like we're having the Hoods Up weekend, and how there'll be people out here. I'll probably be here explaining some of what goes on with this, and you know, kind of remember the story and history of it. It's a lot of really neat stuff here.
And that's a good event, too, to really kind of see, I think, a little bit what you're talking about, because so many of our engines are a little strange.
Yeah.
There's
like this
one. Or very experimental, because we're talking about the time before the industry had to follow any kind of standards or safety regulations. So it was really a time to experiment. And if you could do it, go for it. I mean, you know, so you see a lot of that here, and with the engines a lot. I think that's really interesting too, that, you know, and like I said earlier, sometimes they stump us. We don't really understand fully what they were all doing. And it would be a shame if, you know, some of that stuff was removed and replaced with something more modern because it was, you know, easier to operate or look prettier or whatever, you know. We don't want to do that. So we want to preserve that side of it too.
And here's something else, and I kind of forgot about this until I glanced down again. This charter that we're talking about may include buildings and related artifacts to historic vehicles in their period of operation. So that buildings that is related to historic vehicles. Let's see, like maybe a diner, maybe a gas station. So we got them too. The factory, yeah. So you have three things right here. And,
well, and you know, we go around about that too with this building, because even the floor, you know, obviously this floor was not this nice. But then, you know, sometimes you do have to kind of, I don't know, what do you want to say, compromise?
I'd say
or
that,
you have to understand just what's expected modern. Obviously, the floor was just not really very safe for people.
Right.
It was used as a factory. The factory workers, a lot of heavy machinery on it. It had different, there were different goals for a factory floor than what people walk over. So that was something that
But
could be
on the
changed.
flip side of that is because the floor was as bad as it was hard to clean, which is not good for the preservation
The
of the
vehicles.
vehicles. And
goes round and round,
there
yeah.
would be a problem once in a while with water too.
Yes.
And so there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That justified a new floor.
It did. But again, we go through these discussions a lot, and where do you draw the line in historic preservation versus a nice, beautiful looking restoration?
And,
It's like the diner, and we don't make food in there. You know, we
Right.
serve food in there on occasion, but we don't make food in there. Why? Because nowadays you need to have X amount of space, and you need to have certain surfaces, which that diner doesn't have. So you would be essentially transforming that diner into something totally different, and that's not worth it to us. We want to keep the historical
Right.
look of the diner. So
Yep. So
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
no, that's.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say it mentions in here about the proper documentation of that too. So there you do. That just broaden your job title.
Man, I got more to do, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got time.
This was interesting, and I think they only adopted it a few years ago, right? This is not that old.
2012.
Okay, yeah.
So, and it mentioned in here somewhere, it's also was based on and inspired by a Venice charter from 1964, which I'm not sure
wow.
what that is. The Barcelona charter from 2003, which was for historic ships, and the Riga charter from 2005 for historical rail vehicles. So
Wow.
it's kind of interesting. It
Yeah.
just kind of opened my eyes a little better. So
Very interesting.
go.
I hadn't
Yeah.
heard about it till you sent me
yeah,
the info.
I thought you
so-
had it memorized or something.
No, not quite.
You had
give,
a day.
Give me till tomorrow. Is that all right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I'll
Call me
quiz
up and
you.
quiz me tomorrow. All right. I think
Okay.
we're.
I think we're
we
going
good
back
here?
into our preserved diner.
Back to the diner. Yeah.
Preserved diner.
Preserved.
Yes. So we're talking about Gene London and
With-
stuff, and Ray back here is talking about that. I don't remember Gene London because I grew up in Jersey.
Yeah,
You're like too young, right? Okay.
Yes,
I had
but
my
usually
Jersey.
I can hang.
And,
but
and
I don't know Gene London.
one of those shows back then, those kid shows, like from the '60s, maybe there was some character named what was it? Spring, summer, autumn, winter, something like that. And so Autumn, who works here on my phone, that's
yes,
the way I
yes.
have her written. So.
I like it.
Oh yeah,
I'll
so
let her know.
it's cool
Oh,
stuff.
it makes me
Hey,
feel
so
good.
anyway, since we're talking, so where have you been lately?
Well, I have been to the great bustling Fulton County, Pennsylvania.
Fulton County. Where's Fulton County at?
Fulton County is, well, I was actually right outside of McConnellsburg,
Okay,
which
yep.
is the county seat,
Okay,
very close to the Maryland border.
all right.
Not a very populated county. It's pretty
Need
much
more.
there is a need more.
Yeah.
My
And-
mom, you know what my mom used to call that town?
What?
Need more people.
Yeah. Well, the way I remember that, okay, is the road going through there makes a U-turn. It's like it's going down a hill or something, and it just makes a
Yeah.
180 degrees.
There's like a barn there.
In the middle of it is a barn. All four sides used to be mail pouch,
Yes.
and that's since I look for the mail pouch tobacco barns. So,
Cross
okay, you're
that
gonna
off
write
my
that down.
next. Where have you been lately? Because I was gonna. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
But yes, I do
Okay.
know that barn well.
Yes.
My family would go out there a lot, so I remember that barn. We always
Okay.
used to laugh because it just is funny. Like you
You
really
kinda
just
go
drive
right
right
around
around.
it, yep.
What land do they have to farm?
No,
It's
not-
just funny to me.
nothing.
But yeah, that's where I was out there in McConnellsburg, and I'm gonna show you a photo, and it's pop quiz time, and you're gonna see it on the screen. What is wrong with that photo? do 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 do.
I don't know. I know in that area 522 is a U.S. highway.
Ha ha! That is what's wrong. 522 is a U.S. highway, and that is the state highway Keystone
Right.
sign.
Right.
Oops.
So
So I was with my brother driving out here, and my brother, this is the same one who was is like already planning this multi-day trip to the Bedford area now because he wants to stay in the Lincoln Motor Log cabins
Okay.
that I told him about. So he's really into roads and the history of roads and road signs. Like he's really into this.
Sounds like a TV guest.
That would be hilarious.
Except I don't know if you have two of your family on the same show.
So him and I are driving out on Route 522 there outside of McConnellsburg, and he says, I didn't know what he's looking at, but we're driving. He goes, I hate this sign. I hate this. It drives me nuts. And I said, what's wrong with it? And he goes, well, look at it. That's a U.S. highway, and it's a keystone. I would have not noticed it myself if he had not told me. So this is what it should look like. You'll see on your screen, because that's the U.S. highway shield, they call them. And so that's where I've been. But then I had to look, because you know me. I have to dig a little deeper. And I wanted to know more about just the U.S. highway system. So just a little bit about that. 522 specifically runs from, oh wow, I'm going to say this wrong, Powhatan, Virginia. Is that right?
Sure.
I believe that's
Perfect.
a Native American tribe, and I'm probably mispronouncing it. So from Powhatan, Virginia to Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, and you see there's a little map there, and it just kind of shows you the length of this road. There's 127.5 miles of it in Pennsylvania from the Maryland line near Warfordsburg, which is very close to where we were when we saw this sign. And as you head north, it terminates at US 11 and US 15.
Right
Also,
near
US
Selinsgrove Speedway.
Is that going to be one of your things?
No, but it's just important landmark.
It is an important landmark. And in the borough of McConnellsburg, it does intersect with Pennsylvania Route 16 or Lincoln Way, which was an original part of the Lincoln Highway.
Yep.
Not anymore. But what is a U.S. highway? And why is it different from anything else? Well, U.S. highways are not usually built to freeway standards like the interstates. They can be, a lot more windy, twisty. 522 is pretty
Scenic.
windy, twisty. Yeah.
Scenic.
Scenic, a little slower. They are designated by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, but they're maintained by the state and local governments. So I don't really know.
That's
what the
why
big
the
deal is.
Keystone sign.
But my brother's contention is, come on, they should know better. That should have the proper shield on it. Should not have the keystone. Oh, he was pretty upset about this.
You know,
sign. He's seen it before, and he's still upset about it.
Maybe it's one of those signs that if you look at it from one direction, it's one thing, and if you move over, it's like a different picture. So it might be
Like a
both.
holographic thing?
Yeah.
When I go back out to McConnellsburg, I'll test out your theory.
Okay.
There was also supposedly the best barbecue in the world on 522, which I figured was going to be another thing I had to test out.
Ooh,
So
okay.
while I'm testing out the barbecue, I'll test out your holographic
Okay.
sign theory. But why do we number our routes? And I was looking back, and you talked about Wisconsin earlier with their parking brakes. Well, guess what? Wisconsin was the first state to number its highways. Pretty progressive out there in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And they started doing that in 1908, and they started posting like signs for this in 1918. And I have a picture here of some of the signs you'll see on your screen, and they're pretty neat. They have these like they're triangles with the pointed downward with the number, and then whether they're west or east or going north or south. And then there's one here in the middle of your screen. You see it has a big L underneath it. That means the highway is going to turn left. So they have ours one for turning right, which
So it was kind
funny.
of like driving directions also.
In a way, yeah. I mean, it makes me think of the Blue Books in a way. And it makes me think of that even more because in that middle blurb it says these signs are to be affixed on poles, buildings, barns. I mean, so one week you could go and the building's down or the tree got struck by lightning and it doesn't have a sign on it anymore. But at least they're trying to sort of like standardize this and organize it and make it a little less confusing. And then, at the top, on your screen, you'll see all these, they're kind of like intricate. There's a lot of directions written up there. But you're not driving too fast back in 1918,
No, you weren't.
so you probably actually had time to read them, unlike today. And even the danger sign, there's a danger sign at the bottom there, which is the same shape, the triangle pointed downwards. So Wisconsin's going to start that. Other states start to follow it. And in 1922, New England got in on it. They got together and they established the 6-state New England interstate routes, which you'll see there. And all the way on the left is the U.S. highway shield. They used to have the state abbreviation there up on top.
They cost money. You see them
Really?
sometimes in eBay or flea markets.
Ooh, I bet.
And with the state thing on it.
I bet. Ours was penna.
Yeah.
We always think of PA, but the penna was sticking in there.
They're embossed, is it? Is when the letters stick out. Is that
I
embossed?
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how they are.
Yeah. It's neat. Well, obviously now they got rid of the states on the signs now, but probably a cost-saving measure. What do you want to bet?
Yeah.
And then in the middle, they're individual state routes, and then at the end there, all the way to your right, you'll see the New England interstate routes, which is pretty plain, but a group of states got together to figure
And
this out.
that was their term, was interstate?
New England interstate routes. Yeah.
Okay, because you think of that now as the
Route 80,
interstate
80,
highways.
yeah. Not quite, but
They're using the term back then, which made sense.
yeah, because these are obviously roads that would connect several of the states. They're not just Connecticut routes or whatever. In 1914, the American Association of State Highway, later they add the and Transportation Officials, is formed. And they asked the Secretary of Agriculture to work with the states on this whole road numbering or road organization issue. And I thought that was weird, that agriculture. But I looked back too, in 1914, there was no such thing as Secretary of Transportation. So there you go. They didn't have that yet. They had the state, treasury, war, Navy, Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, Labor. So I guess by default, agriculture gets it.
How about that?
Finally, even though it takes a little while, but in 1925, Agriculture Secretary Howard Gore, and there he is, sitting at his desk with a lovely bouquet of roses. Doesn't he look so studious there? Like you in your book here.
Oh, yeah. It's studious.
Yeah. He appoints this joint board on interstate highways. They're using interstate for now. In 1925, but they decide to call these roads the U.S. Highway, and they also create that shield logo or whatever, which that Route 522 sign should rightfully have, by the way. It got chipped out there.
Right,
Route 522.
absolutely.
So there's a map of this U.S. highway system. Of course, it's really dense east of the Mississippi, and it gets a little less so in the west. But of course, this plan was very controversial. Who knew? So yes, routes were controversial. Some towns were upset that they had been bypassed by these new U.S. highways. And this is the time when we have a lot of like trail associations and auto clubs that get together and they kind of like sponsor a road, or they're really into maintaining this one road. And some of them are feeling slighted because their road wasn't chosen to be a U.S. highway, and they were worried that now their road would become obsolete. But, there's a reason they went with the highways that they did. And some of these roads that the trail and the auto clubs were trying to maintain, they weren't necessarily the most direct routes between cities, or they weren't very good roads. And I was reading, some of these clubs were essentially being paid by the towns to get their road to come into their town, like they were paying dues.
What's interesting, and you mentioned that a moment or two ago about, towns were upset if the road didn't go through their town. And, I think we heard that the same earlier with railroads, like
Yes.
out west, and they
Yep.
would say, you know, you'd see the old Western movie, you know, and
Oh, yeah.
the guy bought all this land up, and he knew the railroad was
Yeah.
going to go through there and
And
stuff.
then it
And
didn't.
yeah,
We're going to hear it again with the interstate system in a
Okay.
few decades, because now all these towns that really rely on people passing through, you know, they've got taverns or restaurants or hotels and
tourist cabins.
tourist cabins. Or like, you know, they even say that in Psycho, you know, the Bates Motel, the highway got rerouted and
Okay.
he doesn't get many customers anymore. Good old Norman.
Cars,
right.
that movie Cars, they talk about the same thing. Too.
Exactly, see? So this argument's going to happen again. But, you know, it was interesting that these towns are upset and these clubs are upset, but it's almost like they were trying to squash some of this, I don't know, small-time corruption going on here with these towns paying to be on a route, and it was interesting. And not necessarily because the route made any logical sense to go from Chicago to New York. I don't want to go through Kentucky, but this town paid all these dues. I mean, it's interesting. But the other thing that was controversial was using numbers instead of names. Yeah, it's a really impassioned response to this. Numbers were looked at as being harsh, and the colorful and the more historic names given to these were more fun. An opinion piece in the Kentucky Herald at the time, and I think it got reprinted in the New York Times then later. This is what they said. The traveler may shed tears as he drives the shady vista of the Lincoln Highway.
What year is this again?
This
Does
would
it
be about
say?
1926 or so.
You know what's interesting? Before you continue, I hear that what you're saying is, you know, that the people were thinking, okay, it's harsh to have numbers, and the names were kind of quaint and interesting stuff. That's kind of how I look at it now.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
you go,
yeah.
I know there was going like through Pottstown. There was a, I think it was Ocean to Lake Highway or something. It went from Atlantic City up to Erie.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, and I'm thinking that's kind of a neat
neat.
name instead of 422. And also to modernize it, you know, you got the interstates now, but the neat roads are the other ones, the old timey things to kind of throw you back.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how things go. Okay, sorry.
Everything changes and stays the same at the same time.
Yeah, well, I like the same stuff.
Yeah.
Or the old stuff. Preservation.
That's right, preservation.
Yeah, that's the key word.
But they said, you know, the traveler may shed tears as he drives the shady vista of the Lincoln Highway, or dream dreams as he speeds over a sunlit path on the Jefferson Highway. But how in the world can a man get a kick out of 46 or 55 or 33 or 21? How can he? And then there's a writer and a poet from the time, Ernest McGaffey. He's quoted as saying, logarithms will take the place of legends and hokum for history. I'm really impassioned about this.
Yeah.
There's people really upset. And it is interesting, but I can see why they did it, because it is confusing. I mean, even look at, like, you know, I live on 724, off 724, but up where I am, it's Revere, but go a few miles and it's Schuylkill. And I mean, even the names change. Where do they change exactly? And I can see what they're trying to do, but it's always, you know, it is less poetic than what we had. The numbering for the U.S. highway systems is, I'm going to say it's pretty flexible, because I read this, but then there's a million exceptions. 2-digit routes are supposed to follow this simple grid in the lower 48 United States. Odd numbers are supposed to run north to south, even numbers generally from east to west. 3-digit numbers are assigned to spurs of those 1 or 2-digit routes. But the spurs don't have to travel in the same direction as their parents, and they don't have to intersect with their parents. And there's exceptions to all what I just said anyway, so what's the point of all these regulations?
Because I was thinking 522 is a spur of 22, I guess.
Yeah,
but
but
it
22
just crosses.
Yeah,
Crosses about right
kind
there.
of a mess. And also toll road. You can toll bridges and tunnels, but there's very few toll roads. And toll roads are actually only allowed as a special, like, alternative road if there is a toll-free route between the same two termini designated as a U.S. highway. So it can only be an alternate. It can't be your only option for U.S. highway. So as of 1989, which is weird, that was the most recent year I could find, the U.S. highway system had a total length of 157,724 miles. Which doesn't seem like a lot. I don't think. I think
That's the U.S. highway system.
yeah, that seems really low to me, especially when we look at this map.
There's-
Now,
there's
I
a-
think I think they've tried to offload some of these roads onto.
yeah,
seems.
yeah, I know
Maybe
some
there's a
of 'em-
small coup going on in McConnellsburg that they're
Well,
trying to get it back
Now,
under.
I've seen some places where the U.S. highway will get changed to a state highway, which might be McConnellsburg.
Maybe there's like some
This is something for
deep
you
local
and
politics going on out there.
you and your family can research this
I
during
think
the summer.
so. This
You-
is
it
like a
just-
long-term
How many
project here.
thousands of miles you have to drive around with 3 kids?
Yeah, they won't mind at all.
No.
I'll go with my brother.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but he'll complain about the number signs the whole time.
Probably. Some other interesting facts I found, US 1 and US 11, which both run through Pennsylvania, were 2 of these original 1925 routes. There are 3 capitals in the lower 48 states that are served only by US routes, and that's Dover, Delaware, Jefferson City, Missouri, which I thought was odd.
Okay.
I don't know. I thought that was odd to me. And Pierre, South Dakota. That's not as strange.
Okay.
What else is out there? I don't know. No offense to our South Dakota fans. There are some 2-digit numbers that have not been used, like 39, 47, 86, and 88, and I have no idea why. Why would you skip them?
I don't know.
Seems very weird.
We could name one of our aisles here.
Okay, sounds good.
U.S. Highway.
Make sure it runs in the right direction
Correct.
before we name it. And another quirk that happens along Route 522 in Pennsylvania. So when you're driving the great 127-mile stretch of 522, you can check this out too. When you're traveling southbound and you enter Mifflin County from Snyder County, Mifflin is spelled incorrectly on the sign.
Whoa.
And there's the photo of it. It's Mifflin County.
Mifflin.
Poor Mifflin.
Yeah.
Poor Mifflin County. I didn't know that. I found that out as I was
Really?
looking for
That's
stuff.
good.
So now you could put that on your 2 bad signs on Route 5,
2 bad signs.
522.
Well, I'm going to go away this coming weekend, and so I'll have to keep my eye out.
You will.
I might even be on 522
You will.
or cross it or
Go
something.
check out the barn too while you're there.
I will. I don't think it's painted. With
No,
nail
I don't
pouch
think it
anymore.
is either anymore. No.
I had to do a mail pouch barn show.
Next month, no. I'll give you more than a month.
So
All right.
anyway,
Well, that's where I've been lately.
that's where you've been.
That's where I've-
522.
Looking at
Cruising
erroneous
Needmore and-
road signs.
in McConnellsburg.
That's right.
Well, 522. What town is the exit on the Pennsylvania Turnpike? What is that right there? Is that
Fort
Brent-
Littleton?
Fort Littleton. Okay.
Yeah,
Which
it's
is interesting.
small.
That's interesting because you get off the turnpike around here, and it's
Yeah.
like these miniature cities. You know, it's
Everything,
really
yeah.
built up.
Strip
And you go
malls
out
and-
there, and it's like
Nothing.
you come off, and there's a stop sign, and you look and say, "Well, here I am." And
There's a
it's-
barn.
Yeah. a
Yeah.
barn. Yeah. Maybe a restaurant, but it's been closed 5 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're very rural, and it's
Yeah.
neat. I like that.
It is.
so.
It is. It is interesting. You wonder why it got an exit. There's a show. Why is there an exit here?
Yeah,
I've got another idea for that.
I just had one, but I'm
Ooh,
not going to
okay.
say
Oh
that.
my
I'm not
gosh,
gonna
we're
say
coming
in
up with too
camera.
many ideas, and we got to close. And
Yeah.
but don't worry, we're brainstorming for next month.
Yeah.
So
Tune in next time.
weird exits and mail pouch barns.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
So I thank you all for joining us, and we wish you all a great holiday season.
Yes.
And 2017 is coming to a close, but we're gonna see you in 2018. And I think we do have a guest for next month
Oh,
planned,
yes.
and we're looking
Oh, yeah.
forward to
We got a
having
good
him
one.
here. So we'll see you in 2018, and everyone stay safe this holiday season. And thanks for watching.